Well, we have federal monies that we've already engaged in, and we've already started projects that way to correct some of the flooding issues. I think that they're still incomplete, and I believe that we need to have citizen involvement, especially individuals that were affected by the flood, that make sure that the city and them are working on the same page. So, basically the monies are spent wisely and not just wasted. The river, I've been here 30 plus years. I went to college here, and the river is exactly the same basically as when I went to college here. So when I hear semi-arid, I'm not sure, where they're pulling that from exactly, but
There was like a scientific study done a couple of years ago that said that currently the region is semi-arid, and that within the next 50 years it would become arid. That's where that came from.
yeah, I've heard this before. They've said this 50 years before that. I've heard these arguments back and forth, and I think it's one of those things you can't predict. The weather's going to do what it needs to do. The earth will change accordingly.
Well, that river is certainly beloved. I like to tell people the story of how I was living in Canada for 2 years in 2010 and 2011 and part of 2012, and how I returned to San Marcos after dreaming about the river for some months. I ostensibly thought I was returning to finish my PhD, and I did continue on that tack for some years until I ran out of time. But the river is the most important asset that we have here in the city of San Marcos, and it's more than an asset. It's really the reason why we're all here. I mean, this place has been continuously inhabited for 13,500 years at a minimum, and I know that because I drove glass bottom boats on Spring Lake for 3 years. And so this place is a very important location in the history of humankind on this continent. And I think that it's one of the most important things that we have to preserve here in the city. Now, the study came out a few years ago talking about the environment and talking about Central Texas in particular. And in that study, the climatologists, the environmentalists who did it stated that we are currently a semi-arid environment. And over the next 50 years, they stated at the time, it was a few years ago, we would slowly turn into an arid environment, which means that our climate here would look more like New Mexico and Arizona than it does currently look, right? So that means that it is necessary for us to make some shifts in the way that we not only do business in San Marcos, but how we build and what we allow to occur within the bounds of our city. And we need to start thinking more about preserving what we have and preparing for this shift that is coming. Now, I trained as a scientist. I was a PhD student in geography up on the Hill at Texas State University for quite a number of years. And I taught environmental classes and physical systems of the environment. So I'm very familiar with climate shift and what's going on with our climate currently. And I can tell you that as a trained scientist, that whatever a scientist says is going to happen and however long they say it's going to happen, it's going to be a shorter time than they said, right? You can generally cut it in half. So I think that our climate crisis is going to be a lot more intensive than we may be thinking, and we need to begin preparing for it now. And everything that I do in the city to prepare for that, which includes making sure our new buildings are as green as we can conceivably make them within an affordable budget, and making sure that we put in place codes that support the conservation of our environment and sustainable methods and energy use moving forward. I'm going to do everything I can to make sure that we are prepared, because this is about the future. This is about the children. I have 4 children, and I want to make sure that when they come to San Marcos, I have a son here now, but when my other children come, as they do, that they have a place that is sustainable for human habitation. And we have to begin that process now.